The security monitor flickered with an image that made the night guard's coffee cup pause halfway to his lips. A small figure in pink pajamas moved through the marble hallway of the Harrison Mansion's West Wing. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and 6-year-old Zuri Washington was walking barefoot toward the mahogany double doors of the master study. This was the 4th night in a row. The guard reached for his radio, then stopped. He'd reported this 3 times already. Each time Mr. Harrison had simply said, "Let her be." But something about tonight felt different. The child moved with more purpose, her small hand reaching up to turn the brass doorknob with surprising confidence. Inside the study, Julian Harrison sat behind his grandfather's desk, reviewing quarterly reports that blurred together after 14 hours of meetings. At 36, he owned 17 hotels across 3 continents, employed over 4,000 people, and lived alone in a house with 42 rooms. The irony wasn't lost on him. The door creaked open. Julian looked up to find large brown eyes staring at him from the doorway. Zuri Washington stood perfectly still, her dark curls wild around her face, her small hands clutching a worn teddy bear. She didn't speak. She just watched him with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Hello, Zuri," Julian said gently, setting down his pen. "Does your mother know you're here?" The child shook her head slowly. "I see." Julian leaned back in his leather chair, considering his options. He could call for the head of staff, wake up Gabrielle Washington, make this into an incident. Or he could handle it differently. "Would you like to come in?" Zuri nodded and stepped inside, her bare feet silent on the Persian rug. She walked directly to the leather sofa near the fireplace and sat down, still watching him. The behavior was strange, yes, but not threatening. Just deeply unusual. Julian had noticed her before, of course. Hard not to notice a child in a house that hadn't heard a child's voice in decades. But over the past week he'd seen her everywhere. In the garden when he took his morning coffee. Outside the library when he selected his evening reading. Lingering near the kitchen door when he discussed menus with the chef. Always watching. Always silent. Always there. "Can you tell me why you follow me?" Julian asked, keeping his voice soft and non-threatening. Zuri's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just stared at him with a look so full of longing it made his chest ache. Then she whispered 2 words that changed everything. "You're safe." Before Julian could respond, rapid footsteps echoed in the hallway. Gabrielle Washington burst through the study door, her blue cotton nightgown covered by a gray cardigan, her natural hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. Relief and terror warred on her beautiful face when she saw her daughter. "Zuri." Gabrielle rushed forward, scooping the child into her arms. "Oh baby, you can't keep doing this." She turned to Julian, tears streaming down her brown cheeks. "Mr. Harrison, I am so sorry. I don't know what's gotten into her. I woke up and she was gone again. I've tried everything, locks on the door, sleeping in her bed with her, but she still finds ways to." "Mrs. Washington." Julian stood, raising a hand to stop her spiral of apologies. "Please sit down. Both of you." Gabrielle hesitated, clutching Zuri closer. In the 3 weeks she'd worked for Julian Harrison, she'd been nothing but professional, keeping perfect boundaries between employer and employee. But those boundaries shattered the moment her daughter started this bizarre behavior. "I'm not angry," Julian continued, gesturing to the sofa. "But I think we need to talk about what's really happening here." Gabrielle slowly sat, settling Zuri on her lap. The child immediately turned to watch Julian again, those big eyes never wavering. Gabrielle's hands trembled as she smoothed her daughter's curls. "I'll pack our things tonight," Gabrielle said quietly, her voice breaking. "I understand you can't have staff who can't control their children. I'm sorry we've been such a problem." "No." The word came out firmer than Julian intended. He softened his tone. "No one is packing anything. I meant what I said. I want to understand what's happening. Zuri said something interesting just before you arrived. She said I'm safe. What does that mean?" Gabrielle's eyes widened. She looked down at her daughter, then back at Julian. "She said that? She actually spoke to you?" "Yes." "What? Doesn't she usually talk?" "She does, but..." Gabrielle's voice caught. "She hasn't said much since her father died 2 years ago. She talks to me sometimes but rarely to anyone else. If she spoke to you, that means..." She trailed off, tears flowing freely now. Julian felt something shift in his chest. He'd lost his own father 5 years ago, understood the weight of that absence. But for a child so young, for silence to become a shield against grief, that spoke to a pain he couldn't fully imagine. "How did he die?" Julian asked gently. "If you don't mind me asking." "Car accident." Gabrielle wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Drunk driver. One moment Marcus was coming home from work, the next moment police were at my door. Zuri was 4. She watched me fall apart, watched me struggle to keep us fed and housed. She became so quiet, so careful, like she was afraid of making things worse. Julian nodded slowly, pieces of the puzzle clicking together. And now she follows me around this house late at night because I'm safe. Safe from what, I wonder? I don't know. Gabrielle held her daughter tighter. I truly don't know. But I promise you, Mr. Harrison, it will stop. I'll find a way to make it stop. What if I don't want it to stop? Both Gabrielle and Zuri looked at him with identical expressions of confusion. Julian stood and walked to the window, looking out at the moonlit gardens. This house is too big for one person. It's too quiet. Too empty. I bought it thinking I'd fill it with family someday, but that hasn't happened. Maybe. He turned back to face them. Maybe Zuri sees something here that I've been blind to. Maybe what she needs and what I need aren't so different. I don't understand, Gabrielle whispered. I'm offering you a different arrangement. Not employer and employee, not master and servant. Something more like family sharing a space. Julian returned to his desk, leaning against it casually. Zuri can have free access to the common areas of the house during reasonable hours. I'll set up a proper bedroom for her near yours. She can join me for meals if she wants. And in exchange, you let me figure out why she feels safe with me. Mr. Harrison, I can't accept that. It's too much. You've already been so generous with the salary and the housing, and now this? People will talk. Your staff already whispers about us. Let them whisper. Julian crossed his arms. I'm offering because I want to, not because I have to. And I'm asking you to accept not as charity, but as something that might help all of us. Can you do that? Gabrielle looked down at Zuri, who was still watching Julian with that same intense, unreadable expression. She thought about refusing, about maintaining dignity and distance. But she also thought about the light in her daughter's eyes, the first real interest she'd shown in anything since Marcus died. And she thought about Julian's words, "You're safe." Maybe they both needed to feel safe. Okay, Gabrielle said finally. We accept. And thank you. Really, truly thank you. Zuri smiled for the first time in weeks. What would you do if you discovered a child following you through your home every night? Would you be angry, scared, or curious? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and hit subscribe to see how this mysterious story develops. This family's journey will touch your heart in ways you never expected. 3 weeks earlier, Gabrielle Washington had stood outside the Harrison estate gates with a crumpled newspaper ad in her hand and a prayer on her lips. The ad had been simple: seeking experienced household manager. Live-in position. Generous salary. References required. The address led her here, to iron gates that probably cost more than every apartment she'd ever lived in combined. Beyond the gates, a circular driveway wound through manicured lawns toward a 3-story mansion that looked like something from a movie. Pale stone, tall windows, actual turrets. Who lived in a house with turrets? Apparently Julian Harrison did. Gabrielle clutched Zuri's hand tighter as they walked through the gates after the security guard checked their names on his list. Her previous employer, the elderly Mrs. Patterson, had moved to Florida to be near her daughter. The reference letter in Gabrielle's bag was glowing, but references didn't pay rent. She had 2 weeks before their apartment lease expired and nowhere else to go. "Mama, it's pretty," Zuri whispered, her first words all morning. She pointed at roses climbing a trellis near the front entrance. "It is pretty, baby. But remember what we talked about? You need to be very quiet and very still during Mama's interview. Can you do that for me?" Zuri nodded solemnly and clutched her worn teddy bear closer. A woman in a crisp gray suit answered the door before Gabrielle could knock. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun and sharp eyes that took in every detail of Gabrielle's carefully pressed blue dress and Zuri's green cotton jumper. "Mrs. Washington? I'm Mrs. Chin, head of household staff. You're 15 minutes early." "Yes, ma'am. I apologize if that's a problem. The bus schedule?" "It's fine. Come in." Mrs. Chin stepped aside, her expression softening slightly when she looked at Zuri. "And this is my daughter, Zuri. I'm sorry for bringing her. I couldn't find a sitter on such short notice, but she'll be very quiet. She won't be any trouble." Mrs. Chen's lips pressed into a thin line. "I see. Well, come along. Mr. Harrison is expecting you in the morning room." The foyer alone was bigger than Gabrielle's entire apartment. Black and white marble floors stretched beneath a crystal chandelier that caught the morning sunlight streaming through tall windows. A curved staircase swept upward to the second floor, its dark wood banister gleaming with polish. Paintings lined the walls, real oil paintings, not prints. Gabrielle had cleaned houses for 8 years, ever since Marcus died, and her office job salary hadn't been enough. She'd seen wealth before. But this was different. This was money that didn't just buy things, it bought silence and space and time. Mrs. Chen led them through a series of hallways to a bright room overlooking the gardens. White furniture, soft yellow walls, and windows that seemed to bring the outside in. Julian Harrison stood near one of those windows, his back to them, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what the Tokyo office thinks," he was saying, his tone firm but not harsh. "The renovation delays are unacceptable. Find out what the actual problem is, not the diplomatic version. I'll call back in an hour." He ended the call and turned, and Gabrielle's first thought was that he looked tired. Her second thought was that he looked kind. His dark blonde hair was slightly messy, his blue eyes had shadows beneath them, and his smile when he saw Zuri was genuine. "You must be Mrs. Washington," Julian said, walking over with his hand extended. "And who is this?" "My daughter Zuri. I apologize for bringing her. It won't happen again if you hire me." "Why wouldn't it happen again?" Julian crouched down to Zuri's level. "Hello Zuri. I'm Julian. That's a nice bear you have." Zuri didn't respond, just pressed closer to her mother's leg. Julian didn't seem bothered by the silence. He stood back up, gesturing to the chairs. "Please sit. Mrs. Chin, could you bring some juice for Zuri? And those cookies the chef made this morning?" "Mr. Harrison," Mrs. Chin said carefully, "we discussed the requirements for this position. Live-in means the staff quarters, which are not suitable for children. Then we'll make them suitable." "How hard is that?" "It's not just the space. A child in the house changes the entire dynamic. Security considerations, noise, disruption to routine." "Mrs. Chen." Julian's voice remained pleasant but took on a quality that suggested he wouldn't be argued with. "Please bring the juice and cookies. We'll discuss logistics later." Mrs. Chen's jaw tightened, but she nodded and left. Gabrielle felt her chances at this job sliding away. No employer wanted to deal with a child, no matter how well behaved. She should have lied, should have said Zuri would stay with family. "Mrs. Washington," Julian said, sitting across from her, "tell me about your previous employment." Gabrielle steadied her voice and launched into her prepared speech. 8 years of experience, excellent references, training in household management, cooking, organization. She'd managed Mrs. Patterson's home for 4 years, everything from daily cleaning to coordinating contractors for renovations. "And why did that position end?" Julian asked. "Mrs. Patterson moved to Florida. She would have taken me with her, but..." Gabrielle glanced at Zuri. "Zuri's father is buried here. We can't leave him behind." Something shifted in Julian's expression. Understanding maybe. Or recognition of shared grief. "I lost my father 5 years ago," he said quietly. "Cancer. I inherited this house and his business and had no idea what to do with either one. I still come down here sometimes and expect to see him reading the newspaper. I'm sorry for your loss. And I'm sorry for yours." Julian leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Here's the situation, Mrs. Washington. I need someone who can manage this house properly. Mrs. Chin is excellent at staff coordination, but I need someone who can make this place feel less like a museum and more like a home. Someone who can plan dinners that aren't formal nightmares, manage the household accounts, coordinate repairs and renovations, and generally make sure I don't die of loneliness in 42 rooms." Gabrielle blinked. "That's very honest. I'm too tired to be anything else. This house is too big. I'm gone half the year for business, and when I'm here, I rattle around like a marble in a jar. I bought it thinking I'd need the space someday, but that hasn't happened yet, and in the meantime it's just empty. Your daughter wouldn't be disrupting anything because there's nothing to disrupt." Mrs. Chen returned with a tray holding juice in a crystal glass and chocolate chip cookies on fine china. She set it on the small table near Zuri, who looked at her mother for permission before reaching for a cookie. "Go ahead, baby," Gabrielle said softly. Julian watched Zuri take a tiny bite, her eyes widening at the taste. "Mrs. Washington, I'm offering you the position. Salary is $75,000 a year, plus room and board for both of you. Full benefits, health insurance for weeks paid vacation. You'll have Sundays off and alternate Saturdays. The staff quarters have 3 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living area. We'll set up one room as Zuri's bedroom, one as yours, and one as an office for household management." Gabrielle's mind reeled at the numbers. 75,000? She'd been making 32,000 at her last job. That was more than twice what she'd hoped for, enough to save to build a future for Zuri, to stop living paycheck to paycheck. That's too generous, she heard herself say. The standard salary for this position is maybe $50,000. Standard doesn't account for the isolation of this location or the fact that you'd be on call most of the time I'm in residence. It also doesn't account for having your daughter here, which I'm sure adds complexity to your life. I'm offering what I think is fair. Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Chen interjected. Perhaps you should discuss this with your legal team before making such an offer. My legal team can draw up the contract tomorrow. Mrs. Washington, do you want the job? Did she want it? She wanted to cry. She wanted to fall to her knees and thank him. She wanted to ask what the catch was because nobody offered this kind of life-changing opportunity without strings attached. But she looked at Zuri, who was carefully eating her cookie and looking at Julian with curious eyes. She thought about their apartment with its leaky ceiling and loud neighbors. She thought about the stack of past-due bills in her purse. She thought about Marcus, who would want her to give their daughter every possible chance at a better life. Yes, Gabrielle said. I accept. And thank you. You won't regret this. I promise you won't regret this. I'm sure I won't. Can you start next Monday? That gives you a week to handle your current living situation. Monday is perfect. Julian stood, offering his hand again. Gabrielle shook it, feeling the warmth and firmness of his grip. This was really happening. They were really going to be okay. One condition, Julian added. Zuri stays in the staff quarters unless invited elsewhere. This is still my home and I need my privacy maintained. Is that understood? Completely understood. She won't be any trouble, Mr. Harrison. I promise. Julian smiled. Call me Julian when it's just staff. The Mr. Harrison thing makes me feel ancient. As Mrs. Chen led them back through the mansion toward the exit, Gabrielle squeezed Zuri's hand. We're going to be okay, baby, she whispered. Everything's going to be okay now. Zuri looked back over her shoulder at the morning room, where Julian had returned to his phone call. She didn't say anything, but something in her expression made Gabrielle's heart twist. Her daughter was looking at the billionaire the way she used to look at her father. Gabrielle told herself it meant nothing. Zuri was just curious about the nice man who'd given her cookies. It was natural. It was innocent. It was fine. She had no idea that 3 weeks later, that curiosity would turn into something no one could explain. By the end of her second week, Gabrielle had established a rhythm at the Harrison estate. She woke at 6, got Zuri dressed and fed, then managed the household staff schedules while Zuri colored in their small living room. The staff quarters were nicer than anywhere they'd lived before. Clean carpet, fresh paint, new furniture that didn't sag or creak. Mrs. Chen had been coolly professional but not unkind, showing Gabrielle where everything was kept and how Julian preferred things organized. Julian himself was gone most of that first week, traveling to inspect one of his hotels in Singapore. The house felt even emptier without him, staff moving through rooms like ghosts maintaining a shrine. When he returned Sunday evening, Gabrielle had dinner waiting: roasted chicken with herbs, garlic potatoes, green beans. Simple food, the kind Mrs. Patterson had taught her to make properly. Julian ate in the formal dining room alone, as apparently was his custom. Gabrielle had offered to set up something less formal, maybe the breakfast nook or the morning room, but Mrs. Chen insisted this was how things were done. Gabrielle didn't push. Not yet. She was still too new, too uncertain of her place here. That night, Zuri woke from a nightmare. Gabrielle held her daughter as she cried, rocking her the way she had since Marcus died. The nightmares came less frequently now, but they still came. Dreams of car crashes, of daddy not coming home, of being alone forever. Sure, baby. Mama's here. You're safe. Can we go see the roses? Zuri whispered after her tears stopped. The pretty ones by the door? Gabrielle glanced at the clock. 8:30. Not terribly late, and fresh air might help Zuri settle. Okay. But just for a few minutes and then straight to bed. They slipped on shoes and light jackets, leaving their quarters through the back entrance that led to the service areas. Gabrielle had memorized the staff corridors quickly, the hidden passages that let them move through the mansion without disturbing the main areas. But Zuri had other ideas. This way, Mama. She tugged Gabrielle's hand toward the main hallway instead of the back exit. No, sweetie. We use the other doors, remember? These are Mr. Harrison's spaces. But the roses are that way. Zuri pointed toward the front of the house. She was right, of course. The climbing roses were near the main entrance, not accessible from the service exits. Gabrielle hesitated, then decided it would be fine. They'd be quick, and Julian was probably working in his study anyway. He'd never know they were there. They walked through marble hallways lit by soft sconces, their footsteps echoing slightly. Zuri's hand was warm in hers, her daughter's tension easing as they moved. When they reached the foyer, Gabrielle opened the heavy front door just enough for them to slip through. The evening air was cool and smelled of jasmine. The roses climbed their trellis in shades of pink and cream, petals glowing in the security lights. Zuri reached out to touch one gently, careful not to disturb it too much. "Pretty?" she whispered. "Very pretty. Your daddy would have liked these roses. Remember his little garden behind our old house?" Zuri nodded. Marcus had grown tomatoes and basil, nothing fancy, but he'd been proud of it. He'd let Zuri water the plants every evening, teaching her to be gentle, to care for growing things. "I miss Daddy," Zuri said softly. "I know, baby. I miss him too." They stood there together, mother and daughter, breathing in the night air and trying to hold on to memories that faded a little more each day. Gabrielle didn't notice the window above them, didn't see Julian standing there watching them with a thoughtful expression. But Zuri did. She looked up and met Julian's eyes through the glass. He didn't turn away or close the curtain. He just nodded at her slightly, a simple acknowledgement of her presence. Zuri nodded back. Something passed between them in that moment, something Gabrielle wouldn't understand until much later. The next morning, Zuri disappeared during breakfast. Gabrielle was in the kitchen discussing grocery orders with the chef when she realized her daughter wasn't in their living room where she'd left her with crayons and paper. She checked their bedrooms. Empty. She checked the service corridors. Empty. Panic started to rise in her chest. "Zuri," she called, trying to keep her voice calm. "Baby, where are you?" She found her daughter in the library. The room was 2 stories tall with floor-to-ceiling shelves accessible by rolling ladders. Morning sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns across the oriental rugs. And there, in the center of it all, sat Julian in a leather armchair reading the newspaper, with Zuri cross-legged on the floor nearby looking at a picture book. "I'm so sorry," Gabrielle rushed to say. "Zuri, you know you're not supposed to be in here. Come on back to our rooms." "She's fine," Julian said without looking up from his paper. "I found her studying the books on the lower shelves. She's got good taste. That's a first edition of Where the Wild Things Are she's looking at. Still, she shouldn't be bothering you." "She's not bothering me. She's been completely quiet for 20 minutes. That's more than I can say for most adults I know." Gabrielle didn't know what to say to that. She stood uncertainly in the doorway while her daughter continued to turn pages carefully, as if the book was precious. Which, given what Julian said about first editions, it probably was. "Does she read yet?" Julian asked, finally looking up. "Some. She knows her letters and can sound out simple words. We read together every night before bed." "That's good. Important." He folded his newspaper and set it aside. "My father read to me every night when I was young. Made me love books. Best gift he ever gave me." Zuri looked up at Julian with those big serious eyes. "My daddy read to me too. Before he died." The room went very still. Julian's expression softened in a way Gabrielle hadn't seen before. "What did he read to you?" "Stories about princesses. And dragons. And brave knights. Those are good stories. Would you like to borrow that book? You can take it back to your room if you promise to be careful with it." Zuri's eyes widened. "Really? Really? Books are meant to be read, not just sit on shelves." "What do you say, Zuri?" Gabrielle prompted. "Thank you, Mr. Julian." He smiled. "Just Julian is fine." That became the pattern. Every morning, Zuri would slip away while Gabrielle was busy with household tasks. And every morning, Gabrielle would find her daughter somewhere near Julian. In the library. In the garden where he drank his coffee. Outside his office door. The child never interrupted, never demanded attention. She just wanted to be near him. The staff started to talk. Gabrielle heard the whispers in the kitchen, caught the sideways glances in the hallways. Mrs. Chun pulled her aside after a week of this behavior. "You need to control your daughter," the older woman said, her tone not unkind but firm. "Mr. Harrison may be tolerant now, but this behavior is inappropriate. The child follows him everywhere. It's strange." "I know. I've tried everything. Talking to her, disciplining her, keeping her occupied with activities. She always finds a way to." "To what?" "Stalk him through his own home." The word stalk made Gabrielle flinch. "It's not like that. She's just a little girl who lost her father. Maybe she sees something in Julian that reminds her of what she lost. And that's exactly why it needs to stop. She's projecting her grief onto her mother's employer." That's not healthy for anyone involved. Mrs. Chin was right, of course. Gabrielle knew it. But every time she tried to keep Zuri away, her daughter became distressed in ways she hadn't been in months. The nightmares increased. She stopped eating as much. The silence that had been lifting started to settle back in. Gabrielle was caught between protecting her job and protecting her daughter's fragile mental health. She didn't know which choice was right. Then Julian left gifts. The first was a coloring book. Gabrielle found it on the small table in their living room with a note. Thought Zuri might like this. J. The second was a set of watercolor paints with brushes and thick paper. No note this time, but Gabrielle knew where they came from. The third was a stuffed bunny, soft and white, with long ears and a pink nose. Zuri clutched it like she'd clutch a lifeline. Why is he doing this? Gabrielle asked Mrs. Chin. I don't understand. The older woman's expression softened slightly. Mr. Harrison is a kind man. Too kind sometimes. His fiancée left him 3 years ago because she said he cared more about strangers than building a life with her. She wasn't entirely wrong. He gives away half his income to charities, visits children's hospitals in every city he does business in, and once flew to Alaska to personally deliver supplies to a remote village after a storm. So yes, he's leaving gifts for a sad little girl. That's who he is. That night, Gabrielle sat Zuri down for a serious conversation. Baby, we need to talk about Mr. Julian. Zuri hugged her new bunny and waited. You can't keep following him around. I know you like him and I know he's been very kind to us. But this is his house and he needs his privacy. Can you understand that? He doesn't mind, Zuri said softly. He told me. He told you what? That I could come see him whenever I want. That the house is big enough for both of us. Gabrielle felt her control of the situation slipping away entirely. When did he tell you this? This morning. In the garden. He was reading and I sat on the bench near him, and he said I was good company because I didn't try to fill silence with words. This was getting out of hand. Gabrielle needed to talk to Julian directly, needed to set proper boundaries before this became a real problem. She waited until after dinner, when she knew he'd be in his study, and knocked on the door with her heart pounding. Come in. Julian was at his desk, laptop open, but he closed it when she entered. Mrs. Washington. Is everything all right? We need to talk about Zuri. All right. Sit down. Gabrielle sat, gathering her thoughts. I appreciate everything you've done for us. The job, the housing, the kindness you've shown my daughter. But I'm worried this situation is becoming inappropriate. Zuri follows you everywhere, and while you say you don't mind, I'm concerned about boundaries. About what people might think. About what's healthy for her. Julian listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. What does Zuri say when you ask her why she follows me? She doesn't really explain. She just says you're safe or that she likes being near you. It's like... Gabrielle struggled for words. It's like she's looking for something she lost and she thinks she might find it with you. And that bothers you? It terrifies me. What happens when we have to leave? Or when you get tired of having a 6-year-old shadow? She'll be devastated. She's already lost her father. I can't let her lose another person she's attached to. Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised her. What if she doesn't have to lose anyone? What if I don't get tired of it? You say that now, but... Mrs. Washington, Gabrielle, I'm going to tell you something I don't tell many people. This house is a prison made of marble and money. I bought it thinking I'd fill it with family, with children running through these halls and laughter echoing off these walls. But that didn't happen. My fiancé left. My friends are too busy with their own lives. My father is dead. And I sit in this study every night wondering what the point of all this is. He stood and walked to the window, the same window where he'd watched her and Zuri with the roses. Then this little girl shows up and follows me around without asking for anything, without expecting anything. She just wants to be near me. Do you know how rare that is? How precious. I'm not bothered by it. I'm grateful for it. Gabrielle felt tears prick her eyes. But what if it's not healthy for her? What if she's confusing you with her father? Then we help her understand the difference. But we don't have to do that by pushing her away. We can do it by being present, by being honest, by letting her grieve and heal in whatever way she needs to. That's very generous of you, Gabrielle said carefully. But I'm still her mother. I'm still responsible for making good decisions for her. Of course you are. And if you decide she needs to stop spending time with me, I'll respect that. But I'm asking you to consider that maybe this is good for both of us. Maybe we're helping each other in ways that aren't obvious yet. Gabrielle looked at this man, this billionaire who could have anything he wanted but seemed so genuinely lonely, and made a decision that would change all their lives. Okay. But if I see any sign this is hurting her, we stop immediately. Agreed. Agreed. She left his study feeling like she'd just made a deal with consequences she couldn't predict. But sometimes she thought you had to take a leap of faith. Sometimes kindness and hope had to lead the way, even when the path ahead wasn't clear. The gifts didn't stop. If anything, they increased, but they changed in nature. Instead of toys and books, Julian started leaving experiences. "Good morning," he said one Saturday when he found Zuri watching him tend to the rose garden. "Want to help?" Zuri nodded enthusiastically. Julian handed her a pair of small gardening gloves that appeared to be exactly her size. "You'll need these. Roses have thorns and we wouldn't want you getting hurt." He showed her how to deadhead the spent blooms, how to check for pests, how to water at the base without getting the leaves wet. Zuri absorbed every word with intense concentration, her small hands careful and precise. Gabrielle watched from the kitchen window, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. This was the most animated she'd seen her daughter since Marcus died. Zuri was talking, asking questions, even laughing when a butterfly landed on her glove. "Your daughter is a natural," the chef commented, following Gabrielle's gaze. "And Mr. Harrison looks happy. I haven't seen him smile like that in years." "How long have you worked here?" Gabrielle asked. 6 years. Since Mr. Harrison Sr. was still alive. This house was different then. Full of people and parties and life. After the old man died and the fiancée left, it became a mausoleum. "Mr. Harrison rattles around here like a ghost. He told me he's lonely. Desperately. But he's also stubborn about fixing it. He could remarry, have children of his own, fill these rooms properly. But he says he's too busy, too focused on the business. I think he's just afraid of being hurt again." Gabrielle filed that information away, adding it to the picture forming in her mind of who Julian Harrison really was beneath the wealth and the loneliness. That evening, something unprecedented happened. Julian knocked on their quarters door. Gabrielle opened it to find him standing there in jeans and a green sweater, looking more casual than she'd ever seen him. I hope I'm not intruding, but I wanted to ask if you and Zuri would join me for dinner tonight. Not in the formal dining room. I thought maybe we could eat in the breakfast nook. Something less stuffy. You want us to eat with you?" Gabrielle couldn't hide her surprise. "If you're comfortable with it. I realized I never actually have dinner with people anymore. I just eat alone while staff serves me. It seems ridiculous." "We'd love to," Gabrielle said before she could overthink it. "What time?" 7? And dress casually. This isn't a formal thing. At 7, they gathered in the breakfast nook, a cozy room with windows overlooking the garden and a round table that sat 6 comfortably. The chef had prepared pot roast with vegetables, comfort food instead of the elaborate courses Julian usually received. Zuri sat between Gabrielle and Julian, her feet swinging beneath the table, her eyes wide at being included in something so grown-up. "So Zuri," Julian said, passing her the basket of rolls. "Your mom tells me you're learning to read. What's your favorite book so far?" Zuri thought carefully before answering. "The one about the wild things. The boy in the wolf suit who goes to where the wild things are. That's a good one. Do you know why I like that book?" She shook her head. "Because Max gets to be angry and wild and scary, but then he gets to come home to where someone loves him. Sometimes we all need to be wild things, but it's nice knowing there's always a home to come back to." Gabrielle felt her throat tighten. Was that what Julian was? A wild thing looking for home? "Did you have a home when you were little?" Zuri asked. "I did. This one actually. I grew up in this house. My father raised me here after my mother died." "How old were you when she died?" 5. "Not much younger than you are now." Zuri processed this information with the seriousness of someone who understood loss intimately. "Do you remember her?" "A little. I remember her voice. Her laugh. The way she smelled like vanilla because she loved baking. My father kept pictures everywhere so I wouldn't forget her face. Mama keeps pictures of my daddy. So I won't forget." "That's very smart of your mama." Gabrielle blinked back tears as she watched this wealthy, powerful man connect with her daughter over shared grief. There was no pretense here, no condescension. Just honest conversation between two people who understood what it meant to lose someone precious. "Julian," Gabrielle said softly, "tell us about your hotels." Zuri's never stayed in a hotel before. His face lit up. "Really? Well, we'll have to fix that. But let me tell you about the first one I ever built." He told them stories about architectural mishaps and design triumphs, about the hotel in Tokyo with rooms so small you had to be creative with space, and the resort in Bali where monkeys kept stealing supplies. He made Zuri giggle with tales of difficult guests and made Gabrielle laugh with his imitations of snooty critics. For the first time in 3 years the breakfast nook felt alive. After dinner, Julian surprised them again. "I have something for you both. Follow me." He led them to a room Gabrielle hadn't been in before, a sitting room on the second floor that connected to the main library. Inside, 2 armchairs sat near a fireplace with a small table between them. But what caught Gabrielle's attention was the new addition, a child-sized reading nook built into the corner with soft cushions, a small bookshelf, and a lamp shaped like a crescent moon. "I thought Zuri might like her own space for reading," Julian explained. "The cushions are comfortable, and I had the library shelves reorganized so all the children's books are on the bottom 3 shelves where she can reach them. This room connects to the library so she can access both spaces easily." Zuri ran to the nook and climbed in, her face glowing with delight. She touched the soft blue cushions, the moon lamp, the carefully selected books. "For me? Really? Really? You're welcome here anytime. Both of you are." Gabrielle couldn't speak around the lump in her throat. She'd expected employment, a paycheck, a place to live. She hadn't expected this generosity that went beyond money into the realm of genuine care. "Julian, this is too much," she finally managed. "It's not enough," he said quietly. "You're both living in this house but existing on the edges like you don't belong. I want you to feel like you belong. Like this is home, not just a workplace." "Why?" The question came out before Gabrielle could stop it. "Why do you care so much?" Julian looked at Zuri, who was already pulling books from the shelf to examine them. "Because I know what it's like to be a lonely child in a big house. I know what it's like to lose a parent too young. And I know what it's like to have wealth but no family to share it with. If I can make this place less lonely for her and maybe for you too, then maybe it becomes less lonely for me as well. Is that selfish?" "No," Gabrielle whispered. "That's human." He smiled, and for a moment he didn't look like a billionaire at all. He just looked like a man who wanted connection, who wanted meaning, who wanted to matter to someone. Over the following days, the pattern continued. Julian sought them out instead of waiting for Zuri to follow him. He asked Gabrielle's opinion on household matters, actually listening to her ideas about making the mansion feel more lived in. He played chess with Zuri in the library, teaching her the moves with endless patience. "Your daughter is smart," he told Gabrielle one afternoon. "Really smart. She sees patterns in the game that some adults miss. Her father was smart too. A software engineer. He would have been proud to see her learning chess. Tell me about him. Marcus, right?" They were in the garden, watching Zuri hunt for ladybugs in the flowers. Gabrielle found herself telling Julian things she hadn't told anyone. How Marcus made her laugh. How he'd proposed during a rainstorm because he couldn't wait for perfect weather. How he'd been so excited when they found out about Zuri, reading parenting books and building a crib with his own hands. "He sounds like a good man," Julian said. "He was. The best. Which makes it so hard that he's gone. Zuri deserved more time with him. I deserved more time with him." "You did. Death isn't fair that way. It takes people before we're ready, before they've had enough time to do everything they wanted to do." "Is that how you felt when your father died?" "Yes. He had so many plans. Places he wanted to visit, grandchildren he wanted to meet. Cancer doesn't care about plans." They sat in comfortable silence, 2 people who understood that grief never really ended, it just became part of who you were. And somehow, that shared understanding made everything else easier. That night, after Zuri was asleep, Julian offered something that would change everything. "I want to pay for Zuri's education," he said. They were having tea in the morning room, a habit that had developed over recent evenings. "Private school, college, whatever she needs. She's too bright to be limited by circumstance." Gabrielle's first instinct was to refuse. This was too much, too generous, too likely to create obligations she couldn't fulfill. But then she remembered Julian's words. Accept help graciously, let people be kind, believe that hope and love should lead. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You already have. You've let me be part of her life. You've let me matter to someone again. That's worth more than you know. You matter, Julian. You matter so much." Something passed between them in that moment, something electric and terrifying and full of possibility. Gabrielle saw it in his eyes, not just loneliness but longing. Not just kindness but something deeper. She wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she also couldn't deny the way her heart beat faster when he smiled, or the way her thoughts lingered on him long after their conversations ended. This was dangerous territory, falling for your employer, falling for someone so far out of your league. But maybe, just maybe, league didn't matter when two people recognized each other's lonely hearts and decided to be brave enough to connect. The spring rains came early that year, turning the gardens into a watercolor painting of green and gray. Zuri pressed her face against the window of their quarters, watching rain slide down the glass in silvery rivers. "Can't go outside today, baby," Gabrielle said, reviewing the household accounts on her laptop. Julian had asked her to take over financial management, saying she had a better eye for unnecessary expenses than he did. The trust implicit in that request still made her stomach flutter. "But the roses need water," Zuri protested. "The rain is watering them. That's nature's way." Zuri accepted this with her usual seriousness. "Mama, can I go to my reading spot?" Gabrielle checked the time. 9 in the morning. Julian would be in his main office on a conference call with his Hong Kong team. The library would be empty. "Okay. But stay in the reading nook. Don't disturb anyone." "I won't." 20 minutes later, Gabrielle's phone rang. Julian's name on the screen. "Hello. Can you come to the library? Bring an umbrella." The request was so strange she didn't question it, just grabbed an umbrella from the hall closet and headed upstairs. She found Julian and Zuri standing near one of the tall windows, both pointing at something outside. "What's wrong?" Gabrielle asked. "Nothing's wrong. Look." Julian gestured to the garden below. A family of deer stood in the rain, 3 does and 2 fawns, grazing on the grass near the rose beds. The fawns were tiny, their legs still wobbly, their spots bright against their brown coats. "They're beautiful," Gabrielle breathed. Zuri spotted them from her reading nook. "I was passing through when she called out. I thought you'd want to see." They stood together in silence, watching the deer move through the rain. Zuri pressed against Julian's side naturally, and he rested a hand on her shoulder just as naturally. The gesture was so casual, so comfortable, it made Gabrielle's chest ache. This was what a family looked like. This was what Zuri had lost when Marcus died. And now she was finding it again, but with someone who wasn't family, who couldn't be family, who would eventually move on with his life and leave them behind. Gabrielle needed to be more careful. She needed to protect her daughter's heart. But then Julian looked at her over Zuri's head, and his expression was so full of genuine happiness that Gabrielle's protective instincts wavered. Maybe this wasn't about protection. Maybe this was about trust. "Gabrielle," Julian said later, after Zuri had gone back to her reading, "can we talk?" They settled in his study with coffee and the rain drumming against the windows. Julian seemed nervous, which was unusual for someone who negotiated million-dollar deals without flinching. "I want to tell you something about why I never married," he began. "Why I'm 36 and living alone in this enormous house." Gabrielle waited, sensing this was important. "I was engaged 3 years ago. Victoria. We'd been together for 2 years and everyone said we were perfect for each other. Same background, same social circle, same everything. I thought I loved her. I think she thought she loved me. What happened? I took her to a children's hospital. One of the ones I donate to. I wanted her to see why the charity work mattered to me, why I couldn't just write checks and forget about it. We spent the day with kids fighting cancer, kids who might not see next Christmas. And I loved it. Loved talking to them, playing games with them, reading to the ones too sick to get out of bed." He paused, his jaw tightening. "Victoria hated it. She said it was depressing, that I was too emotionally involved, that I needed to maintain proper distance from charity cases. She used those exact words. Charity cases. These were children fighting for their lives and she called them cases. Oh, Julian. I saw her clearly for the first time. Saw that she didn't actually care about people, just about status and appearances and being the wife of someone wealthy. When I ended the engagement, she told me I'd never find anyone willing to put up with my bleeding heart. That I cared more about strangers than building a real life. She was wrong. Was she? I'm 36 and alone. Maybe she was right." Gabrielle set down her coffee cup carefully. "Julian, you're alone because you have standards. Because you believe wealth comes with responsibility. Because you see people as people, not as charity cases or social connections. That's not a flaw. That's who you are, and it's beautiful." His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You really believe that?" "I know that. I see it every day in how you treat Zuri, how you treat me, how you treat everyone in this house. You're a good man. The fact that Victoria couldn't see it says everything about her and nothing about you. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand something. When I offered you this job, when I welcomed Zuri into my home, it wasn't charity. It was selfish. I needed you both here. I needed to remember what it feels like to matter to someone, to have people in my life who see me as a person instead of a bank account. We do see you. We see you very clearly. The air between them felt charged with possibility. Gabrielle knew she should leave, should maintain professional distance, should protect them both from the complications that would come from crossing this line. But she didn't move. Gabrielle, Julian said softly, I need to tell you something else. Okay. I'm starting to have feelings for you that go beyond employer and employee. I'm trying to be appropriate, trying to respect boundaries, but every time you smile at me or laugh at my jokes or talk to me like I'm a real person, I fall a little bit more. And I needed you to know that even though I'm terrified it will make everything weird between us. Gabrielle's heart hammered against her ribs. She thought about all the reasons this was a terrible idea. The power imbalance. The risk to her job. The danger of Zuri getting more attached. The inevitable heartbreak when reality set in. But she also thought about the way Julian made her feel seen for the first time since Marcus died. The way he treated her daughter with genuine care. The way he'd been nothing but honest and kind and real with her. Julian, she said carefully, I need to be honest too. I'm scared. I'm scared of losing this job, losing this home, losing the security you've given us. But I'm more scared of letting myself feel things for you and then having it fall apart. Zuri's already attached to you. If this goes wrong, she loses another person she cares about. I know. That's why I'm telling you now before things get more complicated. You get to decide what happens next. If you want to keep things professional, I'll respect that completely. If you want to explore this, we do it slowly and carefully with Zuri's well-being as the priority. And if you want to leave, I'll help you find another position and give you the best references you've ever seen. No pressure. No expectations. Just honesty. Gabrielle took a deep breath, thinking about Marcus, about the life she'd lost, about the possibility of building something new. She thought about Zuri's face when Julian taught her chess, about the reading nook built just for her daughter, about the way this house had started to feel like home. I want to explore this, she said quietly. But slowly. Very, very slowly. Julian's face broke into the most genuine smile she'd ever seen. Slowly works for me. I've got time. What does slowly mean to you? Gabrielle needed clarity, needed boundaries. It means we keep doing what we're doing. Dinners together. Conversations. Getting to know each other as people, not roles. And when we're both ready, maybe we add in some elements that are clearly romantic. Like actual dates. Dates? Gabrielle tested the word. I haven't been on a date in 8 years. I haven't been on a real one in 3. We'll figure it out together. They sat in comfortable silence, the rain creating a cocoon of intimacy around them. Gabrielle thought about texting her best friend Rachel, who lived 2 states away now but still kept in touch. Rachel would tell her she was crazy. Rachel would remind her that billionaires didn't fall for their housekeepers except in romance novels. But this wasn't a novel. This was real life with real feelings and real risks and real possibilities. Can I ask you something? Gabrielle said. Why me? You could date anyone. Literally anyone. Why are you interested in the woman who cleans your house and can barely afford her daughter's shoes? Julian's expression turned serious. Because you see me, Gabrielle. Really see me. Not the money or the house or the business success. You see the lonely man who sits in this study every night wondering what the point of it all is. You see the person who still misses his father. You see the human being underneath everything else. And you're not impressed by the wealth. If anything, you're intimidated by it, which means you want me for me, not for what I can give you. That's not entirely true. I do want what you can give me. I want this job, this home, this security for Zuri. I'm not noble enough to pretend those things don't matter. But you didn't pursue me for them. You tried to keep your distance, remember? You told Zuri to stay in your quarters. You maintained professional boundaries until I broke them down. That matters. Gabrielle felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared I'm going to screw this up. Then we'll screw it up together. But at least we'll be honest while doing it. That became their new normal. Dinners together every evening. Late-night conversations over tea. Julian teaching Zuri chess while Gabrielle worked nearby. Slowly, carefully they built something fragile and new. Mrs. Chin noticed, of course. She pulled Gabrielle aside one morning in the kitchen. I see what's happening between you and Mr. Harrison. Gabrielle braced herself for judgment or warnings about knowing her place. I'm glad, Mrs. Chin said instead. I was wrong about you and your daughter. This house needed life. It needed people who care. Mr. Harrison is happier than he's been in years. Just promise me you'll be careful with him. He acts tough, but his heart breaks easily. I promise. I'm being as careful as I know how to be. That's all anyone can ask. As spring turned toward summer, the possibility of happiness felt almost real. Julian took them to one of his hotels for a weekend, showing them the business side of his life. Zuri swam in the pool while Gabrielle and Julian sat under umbrellas and talked for hours about everything and nothing. I could get used to this, Gabrielle admitted, watching Zuri splash in the shallow end. Then let yourself get used to it. Let yourself believe this is real and lasting. What if it's not? What if we're fooling ourselves? Julian took her hand carefully, giving her time to pull away. She didn't? Then at least we tried. At least we were brave enough to risk it. That's more than a lot of people can say. Gabrielle squeezed his hand, letting herself hope. Letting herself believe that maybe, just maybe, kindness and love really could lead the way to something beautiful. Julian Harrison was not a man who left things to chance. He'd built his business empire through careful research, thorough analysis, and strategic planning. So when he found himself increasingly attached to a 6-year-old girl who followed him through his home, he did what he always did. He investigated. Not in an intrusive way. He didn't hire investigators or snoop through Gabrielle's private information. Instead he read psychology books about childhood attachment, articles about grief in children, research papers about the long-term effects of losing a parent young. He stayed up late reading studies on his tablet, making notes, trying to understand. What he learned both comforted and worried him. Children who lost a parent often sought attachment figures to replace what they'd lost. This was normal, healthy even as long as those figures were stable and appropriate. The concerning part was that Zuri had attached to him, someone who wasn't family, who had no permanent place in her life beyond employment relationships. He needed to talk to a professional. Dr. Sarah Patel had been his therapist for 4 years, helping him process his father's death and his failed engagement. She was in her 50s, wise and direct, with an uncanny ability to call him on his nonsense. "So you're calling me about a child," she said when he explained the situation over a video call. "That's new. Usually you call about business stress or loneliness. This is different. I need to understand if what's happening is healthy for her or if I'm being selfish by allowing it. Tell me about your interactions with her. Be specific." Julian walked Dr. Patel through everything. The late-night visits, Zuri's constant shadowing, the reading nook he'd built, the gifts, the dinners together. He expected judgment, but Dr. Patel just listened with a thoughtful expression. "And the mother? You're developing feelings for her?" "Yes. Strong feelings. Which is another complication. Julian, I'm going to be honest with you. This situation is complicated, but it's not inherently unhealthy. Children who've experienced loss often seek out attachment figures who make them feel safe. You've provided stability, kindness, and attention without demanding anything in return. That's actually quite healthy. But I'm not her father. I can't be her father. No one's asking you to be. You can be a positive male figure in her life without replacing her father. The key is making sure she understands the difference, and that requires honest communication appropriate to her age. How do I do that? You talk to her. You acknowledge her father openly. You encourage her to remember him. You make it clear that you're not trying to replace anyone, you're just adding to her life. And you make sure she knows you're not going anywhere. That last part hit Julian hard. What if I can't promise that? What if things don't work out with Gabrielle? What if she decides to leave? Then you maintain a relationship with the child if possible. You don't just disappear from her life because the romantic relationship failed. That's the commitment you need to think carefully about before going any further. After the call, Julian sat in his study thinking. Could he really commit to being in Zuri's life permanently, regardless of what happened with Gabrielle? That was a level of responsibility he hadn't considered. It meant Zuri stopped being just the daughter of someone he was interested in and became someone he had a direct obligation to. It felt right. Scary but right. He decided to take Dr. Patel's advice and talk to Zuri directly. He found her in the library, arranging books by color on her small shelf. "That's a good organization system," he said, sitting in one of the armchairs nearby. "Can I talk to you about something important?" Zuri climbed into the chair opposite him, sitting cross-legged like a tiny adult. "Okay. I've noticed you spend a lot of time with me. Following me around, joining me in different rooms. Can you tell me why?" Zuri thought carefully, her face serious. "You're like Daddy. But not Daddy." "What do you mean?" "You read the same way. You laugh the same way. You smell like the same soap. When I'm near you, I remember Daddy better." Julian's heart cracked. "Do you remember your daddy?" "Some things. His voice is getting fuzzy in my head. Mama plays videos sometimes, but it's not the same." But when I'm with you I can remember better. Is that bad? No, sweetie. That's not bad at all. But I want you to understand something. I'm not trying to be your daddy. Your daddy was special and no one can replace him. I'm just Julian and I like spending time with you. Is that okay? Can I still come see you? Even if you're not daddy? Of course. Anytime you want. But I want you to know that even if your mama and I become closer, I'm still not replacing your daddy. I'm just adding to your family. Does that make sense? Zuri nodded slowly. Like how mama's friend Rachel is part of our family even though she's not related? Exactly like that. Family can be people who choose to love each other, not just people who are related by blood. Do you choose to love us? The question was so direct, so honest it took Julian's breath away. Yes. I choose to love you and your mama. Very much. Good. We choose you too. Just like that, with the simple logic of a child, the most complicated question in Julian's life was resolved. He'd been chosen. They'd chosen each other. Whatever came next, they'd face it as a family. He started being more intentional about honoring Marcus Washington's memory. He asked Gabrielle for photos and created a digital frame that rotated through pictures of Marcus and Zuri together. He placed it in Zuri's room so she could see her father every day. You didn't have to do this, Gabrielle said, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the frame. I know. But Zuri needs to remember him. And I need her to know I'm not trying to erase him or replace him. He's part of her story, which means he's part of our story now. That night, Zuri fell asleep holding the frame, her small face peaceful in a way Gabrielle hadn't seen in years. Julian also started building structured time with Zuri. Chess lessons every Tuesday evening. Garden work every Thursday morning. Saturday afternoon reading sessions. It gave Zuri predictability and showed her that his presence in her life wasn't random or temporary. You're really good at this, Gabrielle told him one evening. The parenting thing. Have you considered having children of your own? I've considered it. But the thought of doing it alone, through surrogacy or adoption, always felt incomplete. I wanted to share it with someone. Build a family together. Is that what we're doing? Building a family? I hope so. If you want that. I want it. God help me, I want it so much. But I'm also terrified. Julian pulled her close and she let herself lean into his warmth. They were sitting in the garden on a bench overlooking the roses, Zuri asleep in their quarters after an exhausting day of play. I'm terrified too, Julian admitted. I've never been anyone's parent figure before. I'm making this up as I go along. But every time Zuri smiles at me or tells me about her day, or falls asleep with her head on my shoulder during our reading time, I think maybe I can do this. Maybe we can do this together. What if your family doesn't accept us? What if your friends judge you for dating the help? Then they're not really family or friends, are they? The people who matter will be happy I'm happy. The rest can think whatever they want. Have you told anyone about us? My therapist. And Mrs. Chin figured it out on her own. But I haven't announced it if that's what you're asking. I wanted to wait until you were comfortable, until we knew this was real and lasting. It feels real to me. It feels real to me too. They kissed for the first time in the garden that night, soft and tentative, like teenagers discovering something new. When they pulled apart, Gabrielle was smiling despite her tears. This is crazy, she whispered. The best things usually are. Over the following weeks, Julian integrated them more fully into his life. He introduced Gabrielle to his business manager as my partner in more ways than one. He took them to charity events, Zuri in a pretty red dress and Gabrielle in borrowed gowns from Julian's sister's closet. His sister Rebecca had been delighted to hear about the relationship and had immediately shipped a dozen designer outfits to the house. Julian never brings anyone to these things, Rebecca had said over video chat. This must be serious. It is, Julian confirmed, looking at Gabrielle with open affection. It's very serious. Good. You've been alone too long. Time to build the family you always wanted. But even as things progressed beautifully, Julian noticed Zuri's behavior intensifying instead of moderating. She followed him more closely, not less. She became anxious when he traveled for business, even for a day. She started having nightmares where he disappeared like her father had. Something's wrong, Gabrielle said one night after calming Zuri from another nightmare. This should be getting better, not worse. She has stability now, she has us both. Why is she more anxious instead of less? Julian didn't have an answer. But he knew they needed to find one, because Zuri's distress was real and growing. Whatever the little girl was afraid of, whatever she was trying to hold on to, it was bigger than attachment or grief. It was something deeper, something they hadn't uncovered yet. And until they understood it, they couldn't truly help her heal. Have you ever watched someone you love struggle with invisible pain? How do you help a child who can't explain what they're feeling? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to see how this family finally uncovers the truth that's been hiding in plain sight. You won't want to miss what happens next. Summer arrived with long golden evenings and the scent of roses heavy in the air. Gabrielle found herself laughing more, smiling more, feeling more like the woman she'd been before Marcus died. Julian had somehow managed to make her believe in possibilities again. Their first official date happened on a Wednesday evening. Julian had arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch Zuri, though the girl had been reluctant to let them leave. "Where are you going?" Zuri asked, her lower lip trembling slightly. "Just to dinner in the city," Julian explained, crouching down to her level. "We'll be back before bedtime. Mrs. Chen is going to make popcorn and let you watch a movie. That sounds fun, right? But what if you don't come back?" The fear in her voice was real and raw. Gabrielle started to say they could go another time, but Julian handled it differently. "Zuri, I need you to listen to me. I will always come back. Always. Do you know why? Why? Because I love you and your mama, and people who love each other don't just disappear. Your daddy didn't choose to leave you. That was an accident, something terrible that happened that no one could control. But when people choose to be in your life, when they promise to stay, they keep that promise. I'm promising you right now, I will always come back. Always. Always." Zuri thought about this, then nodded slowly. "Okay. But you have to pinky promise." Julian extended his pinky solemnly, and Zuri wrapped her tiny finger around his. "Pinky promise. The most unbreakable kind of promise there is." He kept his word. They returned before 8, finding Zuri asleep on the couch with Mrs. Chen reading nearby. Julian gently carried the girl to her bed while Gabrielle thanked Mrs. Chen profusely. "That child adores him," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "And he adores her right back. Whatever you two are building here, it's good. Don't let fear ruin it." The dates became regular. Sometimes fancy restaurants in the city. Sometimes simple picnics in the garden. Sometimes just walks through the neighborhood after Zuri was asleep, talking about dreams and fears and everything in between. Julian told Gabrielle about his mother, who died of an aneurysm when he was 5. One minute she was making breakfast, the next she was on the floor and my father was screaming for help. I didn't understand what happened. I kept asking when she'd wake up. "I'm so sorry. No child should have to see that. It shaped everything about how I see the world. How quickly things can change. How fragile life is. Maybe that's why I'm so careful about protecting the people I love now." "Is that why you give so much to charity? To children's hospitals and family services?" "Partly. But also because I have so much and it seems wrong not to share it. My father taught me that wealth comes with responsibility. That we're only temporary caretakers of these resources." Gabrielle loved discovering these pieces of who Julian really was. The man who visited children's hospitals incognito. The man who set up college funds for staff members' children. The man who read philosophy books before bed and made terrible puns that somehow still made her laugh. But she also shared pieces of herself she'd kept hidden. Her childhood in a small town in Georgia. Her dreams of being a teacher before finances forced her into housekeeping. Her love of painting, abandoned when Marcus died because she couldn't find beauty in anything anymore. "Show me," Julian said one evening. "Show you what?" "Your paintings. You mentioned you kept some in storage." "Julian, they're not good. I'm not some undiscovered artist. I just like painting. I don't care if they're good. I want to see them because they're part of you." So Gabrielle retrieved the 3 paintings she'd stored in their quarters. A sunset over water, a child's face in profile, a garden in full bloom. She'd painted them years ago before Zuri was born, when she'd had time for such things. Julian studied them carefully, his expression serious. "These are beautiful. You have a real eye for color and light. You're just being nice." "I'm not. I know art, Gabrielle. I've been to every major museum in the world. These may not be professional level yet, but they show real talent." "Why did you stop?" "Because after Marcus died I couldn't see beauty anymore. Everything looked gray and sad. I tried to paint once, maybe 6 months after he died, and I just ended up crying." "And now? Can you see beauty now?" Gabrielle looked at him, at this kind man who'd somehow brought color back into her world, and nodded. "Yes, I can see it now." "Then paint again. I'll set up a studio for you in the East Wing. Good light, plenty of space. Paint for yourself, not for anyone else. Just to remember what it feels like to create something." "Julian, that's too much." Stop saying that. Stop telling me when something is too much. Let me give you things. Let me make you happy. Isn't that what people who love each other do? Well, he'd said it so casually, like it was an established fact rather than a terrifying declaration. Gabrielle's heart hammered against her ribs. You love me? She whispered. Julian's expression softened. Of course I love you. How could I not? You're brilliant and brave and beautiful. You make me laugh. You challenge me when I'm being ridiculous. You see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. And you're raising an incredible little girl who's become one of the most important people in my life. So yes, Gabrielle. I love you. Completely. I love you too. The words came out choked with emotion. I'm terrified, but I love you. Love is terrifying. It means giving someone the power to hurt you and trusting they won't. But I'm willing to be terrified if you are. They kissed in the garden under the stars, and for the first time since Marcus died, Gabrielle let herself believe in forever again. Not the same forever she'd had before, but a new one, built on honesty and trust and choosing each other every day. The next morning Julian made good on his promise. He had contractors transform a sunny room in the east wing into a proper art studio. Canvas stretched on wooden frames lined one wall. Brushes and paints filled cabinets. An easel stood near the windows, angled to catch the northern light. When did you have time to do this? Gabrielle asked, standing in the doorway with tears streaming down her face. I called yesterday after our conversation. Had everything rushed. I wanted you to see that I meant it. That I want you to have all the things you've given up. All the pieces of yourself you put aside. Gabrielle painted that afternoon for the first time in years. Zuri sat nearby, coloring in her books while her mother worked. The first painting was simple. The garden outside the window, roses in full bloom, butterflies dancing between flowers. It wasn't perfect. Her hand was out of practice, her color mixing uncertain. But it was joyful. It was alive. It was proof that she was healing. Julian found them at sunset, paint splattered on Gabrielle's hands and Zuri's nose somehow covered in red marker. How's it going? He asked. It's perfect, Gabrielle said. Absolutely perfect. That night, they had dinner together as they always did, but something had shifted. They weren't just employer and employee anymore, weren't just dating tentatively. They were becoming a family, three people choosing each other despite all the logical reasons they shouldn't. I want to ask you something, Julian said after Zuri had gone to bed. They were in his study, Gabrielle curled up on the couch while Julian worked through emails. Okay. I have a business trip next month. Tokyo and Hong Kong, 2 weeks total. I'd like you and Zuri to come with me. Not as staff, as family. I want to show you both the world. Gabrielle's immediate instinct was to refuse. Too expensive. Too disruptive. Too much. But she caught herself, remembering Julian's words about letting him love her, letting him give them things. Zuri's never been on a plane before, she said instead. Then it'll be an adventure. I'll handle everything. Business class tickets, hotel suites, everything. We'll make a vacation out of it. I'll do my meetings and you two can explore. Then in the evenings we'll be together. Won't people talk? Your business associates. Let them. I'm not hiding you, Gabrielle. I'm not ashamed of this relationship. If anything, I want the world to know I'm the luckiest man alive. You're a billionaire who owns 17 hotels. Most people would say you're lucky because of that. Those people don't know what real wealth is. Real wealth is coming home to people who actually care if you're there. Real wealth is sitting in a study with someone who makes you laugh. Real wealth is tucking a little girl into bed and knowing she feels safe because you exist. Gabrielle moved to sit beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You just bring it out of me. They laughed together, comfortable in each other's presence. This was what Gabrielle had been afraid of losing when Marcus died. The easy intimacy of partnership, the joy of sharing daily life with someone who knew her completely. She'd thought that kind of love only came once. She'd been wrong. Over the following weeks, preparations for the trip consumed them. Julian insisted on buying Zuri a proper wardrobe for travel. Gabrielle tried to protest, but Zuri's excitement won out. They spent an afternoon shopping, Zuri trying on dress after dress, her face glowing every time she looked in the mirror. Mama, I look like a princess, she whispered, wearing a green sundress with white flowers embroidered along the hem. You are a princess, Julian said, crouching beside her. The most important princess in my kingdom. You're silly. You don't have a kingdom. Sure I do. It's called the Harrison Estate, and it has gardens and a library and a studio where your mama paints. And you're the princess of all of it. Zuri giggled and threw her arms around Julian's neck. I love you, Julian. I love you too, little one. Watching them together, Gabrielle felt her heart expand with so much love it physically hurt. This was her family now. Not the one she'd planned for, not the one she'd lost, but the one she had. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon when Gregory Blackwell showed up at the Harrison estate. Gabrielle was in the garden with Zuri when she heard raised voices coming from Julian's office. She tried to ignore it, tried to give Julian privacy for his business dealings, but something about the tone made her uneasy. Wait here, baby, she told Zuri. Color your picture. I'll be right back. She found Mrs. Chin hovering outside Julian's office, her face tight with disapproval. Who's in there? Gabrielle asked quietly. Mr. Blackwell. Julian's business partner from the Singapore office. Mrs. Chin pressed her lips together. He's not a nice man. Through the door, Gabrielle could hear Julian's voice, tense and angry. You have no right to comment on my personal life. I have every right when your personal life affects business. The other voice was clipped and cold. You're making a fool of yourself, Harrison? Dating the help? Taking her to business functions? Do you have any idea how that looks? I don't care how it looks. Well, you should care. Our partners in Tokyo are concerned. They're questioning your judgment. And frankly, so am I. Gabrielle's stomach dropped. She should walk away, should let Julian handle this, but her feet stayed rooted to the floor. My relationship with Gabrielle has nothing to do with my business competence. It has everything to do with it. You're distracted. You're making emotional decisions instead of strategic ones. That hotel renovation in Bangkok? You approved a budget increase because the contractor needed to hire local workers instead of cheaper labor from outside. That's not smart business, Julian. That's you trying to be everyone's savior. It's called having ethics. It's called being soft. And this woman has made you softer. She and that child have wrapped you around their fingers. They've seen your wealth and decided to secure their futures. Can't you see that? The sound of Julian's fist hitting his desk made both Gabrielle and Mrs. Chin jump. Get out. Julian. Get out of my office. Better yet, get out of my house. And while you're at it, get out of my company. Consider this your notice. I'm buying you out. You can't do that. We have a contract. Check clause 17. Either partner can initiate buyout procedures with 90 days notice. I'm invoking that clause. My lawyers will contact yours tomorrow. Now leave before I have security escort you out. Heavy footsteps approached the door. Gabrielle barely had time to step back before it flew open. Gregory Blackwell stood there, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a suit that probably cost more than Gabrielle made in a month. His eyes swept over her with contempt. So you're the woman causing all this trouble. I hope you're satisfied with yourself. Gabrielle didn't know what to say. Her mind was reeling from everything she'd heard. Leave her alone, Gregory. Julian appeared in the doorway, his face flushed with anger. You don't get to speak to her. I'll speak to whoever I want. And I'll make sure everyone in our industry knows what's happening here. How Julian Harrison threw away a partnership and his reputation for his maid and her brat. Say one more word about them and I will destroy you. I have the resources, the connections, and the motivation. Try me. Gregory's jaw worked like he wanted to say more, but something in Julian's expression stopped him. He turned and stalked toward the front door, slamming it hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence filled the hallway. Julian stood perfectly still, his hands clenched into fists, his breathing harsh. Julian, Gabrielle said softly. Don't. He held up a hand. Just, give me a minute. She watched him struggle with his composure, saw the moment he got control back. When he looked at her again, his eyes were full of pain. How much did you hear? Enough. Julian, I'm sorry. I never meant to cause problems for you. You didn't cause anything. Gregory is a bigot and a hypocrite. He was looking for an excuse to fight about this partnership anyway. You were just convenient ammunition. He said our partners in Tokyo have concerns. They don't. He's lying. I talked to them last week and everything is fine. He's just trying to manipulate me. But what if he's right? What if I am distracting you? What if people really are questioning your judgment? Julian's expression shifted from anger to determination. Then let them question. Gabrielle, I'm not giving you up because some narrow-minded business associates don't approve. I'm not sacrificing my personal happiness for appearances. If that costs me business, then so be it. You can't mean that. Your company is everything to you. No, it's not. It was everything, but now I have you and Zuri. That changes what matters. Gabrielle felt tears building. Julian, we need to be realistic. I'm a housekeeper. You're a billionaire. This was always going to be complicated. Are you saying you want to leave? No. I'm saying I don't want to be the reason you lose everything you've built. Julian closed the distance between them and took her hands. Listen to me carefully. I've lost people before. I've lost opportunities before. But I've never had what I have with you. I've never felt this complete, this happy, this alive. I'm not letting that go because Gregory Blackwell thinks I should marry someone from my social class. What if it's not just him? What if other people feel the same way? Then we prove them wrong. We build a life so beautiful, so genuine that no one can question it. And if they still do? Then they're not worth our time. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat from where she'd been standing nearby. If I may, Mr. Harrison is right. I've worked in wealthy households for 30 years. I've seen marriages of convenience, relationships built on status, partnerships that looked perfect on paper but were hollow inside. What you two have is rare. Don't throw it away because one bitter man tried to poison it. Gabrielle wanted to believe them. She wanted to trust that love really could overcome every obstacle. But the words Gregory had used echoed in her mind. She and that child have wrapped you around their fingers. They've seen your wealth and decided to secure their futures. Was that what people would always think? That she was a gold digger who'd manipulated a lonely billionaire? That evening, Gabrielle was quiet during dinner. Zuri chattered about the butterflies she'd seen in the garden, but Gabrielle could barely focus. Julian kept sending her concerned glances, but she couldn't meet his eyes. After Zuri was in bed, Julian found her in the studio, staring at a blank canvas. Talk to me, he said quietly. I'm thinking about leaving. The words hung in the air like broken glass. Julian went very still. Leaving the house? Or leaving me? Both. Maybe. I don't know. Gabrielle turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. I can't be the reason you lose your business. I can't be the reason people think less of you. And I can't have Zuri growing up hearing that her mother is a gold digger who trapped a rich man. No one who matters thinks that. But some people do. And those people have power in your world. What if it affects your business? What if it affects Zuri? What if she grows up with people whispering behind her back about how her mother seduced a billionaire? Julian crossed the studio and took her face in his hands. Then we teach her that other people's opinions don't define her worth. We teach her that sometimes doing the right thing means being judged harshly. We teach her to be brave enough to love and strong enough to ignore the noise. That's easy to say when you have money, when you have power. But I don't have those things. I'm vulnerable, Julian. Zuri is vulnerable. If this goes wrong, we have nothing to fall back on. Yes, you do. You have me. Forever. Forever is a long time. Not long enough. Julian pulled a small box from his pocket and Gabrielle's breath caught. I bought this 2 weeks ago. I was going to wait until Tokyo to ask you properly, with a romantic setup and champagne and everything you deserve. But Gregory's visit made me realize something. Life is short. Happiness is rare. And when you find it, you hold on to it with both hands. He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful diamond ring. Gabrielle Washington, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that love matters more than status, that family matters more than money, and that you and Zuri are worth more than anything else I could ever have? Gabrielle looked at the ring, at Julian's hopeful face, at the future he was offering. Every logical part of her brain screamed to say no, to protect herself and Zuri from potential heartbreak. But her heart, the part that had been broken and pieced back together, the part that had learned to love again, that part whispered something else. Say yes. Take the leap. Trust that kindness and hope and love can lead the way. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Julian slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed her with a passion that made her forget every doubt, every fear, every reason this shouldn't work. When they pulled apart, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. I love you, Julian said. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you too. And I'm choosing to believe this is real and lasting and forever. It is. I promise you it is. They held each other in the studio as the sun set outside, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. And for the first time since Marcus died, Gabrielle let herself believe in fairy tales again. Not the sanitized versions where everything is perfect, but the real ones where people make mistakes and face challenges and choose each other anyway. Those were the fairy tales worth believing in. Those were the ones that lasted. 3 days after the engagement, Zuri had the nightmare that changed everything. Gabrielle heard her daughter's screams from across the hall and ran to her room, Julian close behind. They found Zuri sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, her small body shaking with sobs. "Baby, what's wrong?" Gabrielle pulled Zuri into her arms, rocking her gently. "He's leaving. He's leaving like Daddy left. I can see it. I can see him going away." "Who's leaving, sweetie?" Julian crouched beside the bed, his voice gentle but concerned. You're going to leave us. You're going to go away and never come back." "Zuri, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." "But you will. Everyone goes away. Daddy went away. We had to leave our old house. Mrs. Patterson went away. Everyone always leaves." Gabrielle's heart broke at the fear in her daughter's voice. "Zuri, Julian isn't going anywhere. We're getting married. We're going to be a family forever." "No." Zuri pushed away from her mother and looked at Julian with eyes too old for a 6-year-old. "You're sick. Like Daddy was sick before he went away." Julian and Gabrielle exchanged confused glances. "Daddy wasn't sick, baby," Gabrielle said gently. "He was in an accident. But before the accident, he was sick and he didn't tell you. I heard him on the phone. He was talking to the doctor about tests and medicines and not telling Mama because he didn't want her to worry." The room went very still. Gabrielle felt her world tilt sideways. "What are you talking about?" "Daddy was sick. A few weeks before he died. I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard him in the kitchen late at night. He was crying and talking on the phone. He said he had to go for more tests. He said he didn't know how to tell you he might be really sick." "Marcus was sick?" Gabrielle couldn't process this. "But he died in a car accident." "I know. But he was sick before that. And Julian is sick too. I can tell. He has the same smell Daddy had when he was sick. The medicine smell. And he touches his chest sometimes like it hurts. And he's tired a lot even when he pretends he's not." Julian's face had gone pale. "Zuri, what kind of smell?" "Like the hospital. Like chemicals and soap and something else. Something wrong. Daddy smelled like that for a few weeks before he died. And you smell like it now." Gabrielle turned to Julian, her heart hammering. "Julian? Is there something you need to tell me?" He stood up slowly, his expression carefully neutral. "I don't know what Zuri thinks she's detecting, but I'm fine. Healthy. I had a complete physical 3 months ago." "Show me the results," Gabrielle said, her voice harder than she'd ever used with him. "Gabrielle? Show me the results, Julian. Right now." The silence stretched between them. Zuri watched with those big, knowing eyes while Gabrielle and Julian stared at each other. Finally, Julian sat down on the edge of the bed, his shoulders sagging. "I didn't want to worry you," he said quietly. "Not until I knew for sure." Gabrielle felt her stomach drop. "Knew what for sure?" "I've been having chest pains. Shortness of breath. My father died of a heart condition, so I've been seeing a cardiologist. They found an irregularity. I'm scheduled for more tests next week to determine if it's serious." "And you weren't going to tell me?" Gabrielle's voice cracked. "We're engaged, Julian. We're planning a life together. And you were going to hide this from me?" "I didn't want to hide it forever. I just wanted to know what I was dealing with first. If it's nothing, there's no reason to worry you. If it's something serious, I wanted to have a plan before we talked about it. That's not your decision to make alone anymore. We're partners. That means sharing the scary things, not just the good things." "I know. You're right. I'm sorry." Zuri started crying again, soft sobs that shook her whole body. "See? I was right. He's sick. He's going to go away like Daddy." Julian pulled Zuri onto his lap, holding her close. "Listen to me. Yes, I have some health concerns. But I'm not going to die. My father lived with a heart condition for 20 years after his diagnosis. Modern medicine is incredible. And I promise you, I will do everything possible to stay healthy and stay with you." "You can't promise that." "Daddy couldn't promise it either." "You're right. I can't promise I'll never get sick or that something won't happen to me. Life is unpredictable. But I can promise that I'll be honest with you from now on. I can promise that I'll fight as hard as I can to be here for you and your mama. And I can promise that even if something happens to me, you'll always be taken care of. Always. That's not the same as having you here." "I know, baby. I know." They sat together on Zuri's bed, the three of them holding on to each other while the truth settled around them like a heavy blanket. Gabrielle's mind was spinning. Marcus had been sick? Had hidden it from her? Had died before she could even know he needed help? And now Julian was potentially facing health issues too? "Why didn't you tell me about Marcus?" Gabrielle asked Zuri gently. "Why didn't you say something after he died?" "I thought maybe I heard wrong. Maybe it was a dream. And then Daddy died in the accident and everyone said it was just an accident, so I thought maybe the sick part wasn't real. But I've been remembering it more and more. When I'm around Julian, when I smell that same smell, I remember Daddy's voice on the phone. I remember him crying. I remember being scared. Oh baby. Gabrielle held her daughter tighter. I'm so sorry. You've been carrying this alone for 2 years. Is that why I followed Julian? Zuri asked. Because I smell the sick smell and I'm trying to keep him from going away like Daddy? Am I trying to save him? The question broke Gabrielle's heart into pieces. This 6-year-old child had been trying to prevent another tragedy, had been following Julian around not just because he reminded her of her father, but because she'd recognized warning signs she couldn't articulate. You were trying to protect someone you love, Julian said, his voice rough with emotion. That's not wrong, Zuri. That's brave and beautiful and shows how much your heart cares. But here's the thing, you can't protect people from everything. You can't stop bad things from happening just by being near someone. Life doesn't work that way. Then what can I do? You can love us. You can be present. You can tell us when you're scared so we can be scared together. And you can trust that we're doing everything we can to stay healthy and safe. But what if it's not enough? Then we'll deal with it together. As a family. That's what families do. Zuri nodded slowly, still crying but calmer now. I don't want you to die, Julian. I don't want to die either. I have too much to live for now. You and your mama, you're my reasons to fight for every day I can get. They stayed in Zuri's room until she fell back asleep, exhausted from the emotional revelation. Then Julian and Gabrielle moved to his study, where they sat in silence for a long time. I need to see your medical records, Gabrielle finally said. All of them. No more secrets. Okay. I'll get them tomorrow. And I need you to promise me something. No more hiding things to protect me. I'm stronger than you think. I survived losing Marcus. I survived being a single mother. I survived poverty and grief and starting over. I can handle whatever your health issues are, but I can't handle lies. I wasn't lying. I was just omitting truth, which is the same thing. Julian, I love you. But I can't marry someone who thinks they need to protect me from reality. I need a partner who trusts me to face hard things together. Julian looked at her with such raw vulnerability it made her chest ache. I'm scared. I'm scared that if you know how serious this might be, you'll leave. You'll decide it's not worth the risk of losing another person you love. And that's your decision to make for me? Whether I can handle the risk. No, you're right. I'm sorry. I've been alone for so long, making decisions by myself, that I forgot what partnership actually means. Then let's practice. Tell me everything. Right now. All of it. Julian took a deep breath and told her. The chest pains had started 6 months ago, random and mild at first, then increasing in frequency and intensity. The cardiologist had found an abnormal heart rhythm and evidence of possible arterial blockage. The test scheduled for next week would determine if he needed surgery or if medication could manage the condition. Worst-case scenario? Gabrielle asked, keeping her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. Worst case? The blockages are severe and I need immediate surgery with a long recovery time. Best case? It's manageable with medication and lifestyle changes. Most likely case? Somewhere in between. And you were going to face all of this alone? I was going to tell you after the test. Once I knew what we were dealing with. We're dealing with it now. Today. Together. Because that's what families do. Julian pulled her close, and Gabrielle let herself be held even though part of her wanted to rage at him for keeping secrets. But anger could come later. Right now they needed to be united for Zuri's sake. She's been trying to save me, Julian whispered into Gabrielle's hair. This whole time she's been trying to prevent another loss. How does a 6-year-old even think like that? Children who've experienced trauma are hypervigilant. They look for warning signs. They try to control situations to prevent more pain. I should have seen it, should have understood what her following behavior really meant. We both should have. But we understand now. And we can help her process this properly. And your health issues? We face them together. You're right. No more secrets. No more protecting you from things you have a right to know. We're partners in this, whatever comes. Gabrielle looked at her engagement ring, at the symbol of a future that had suddenly become uncertain again. She thought about walking away, about protecting herself and Zuri from another potential loss. It would be the logical thing to do. But love had never been logical. I'm not going anywhere, she said firmly. Health issues, business problems, whatever comes, we face it together. That's what I'm choosing. That's what I want Zuri to see, that we don't run from hard things, we run toward each other through them. Even if it means losing me someday? Even then. Because having you for whatever time we get is better than not having you at all. I learned that with Marcus. I'd rather have 1 year of real love than a lifetime of safe distance. Julian kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I don't deserve you. You absolutely do. Now let's go make sure Zuri knows we're both here, both committed, both fighting for this family we're building. They returned to Zuri's room and climbed into her bed on either side of her, creating a protective circle around the little girl who'd been trying so hard to protect them. Zuri stirred in her sleep and reached out, one hand finding Gabrielle's, the other finding Julian's. We're here, Gabrielle whispered. All three of us. Together. And for the first time in 2 years, Zuri slept through the night without nightmares, knowing the truth and knowing she wasn't alone in facing it. 6 months later, the garden at the Harrison estate had been transformed into something magical. White chairs lined a grassy aisle leading to an arbor covered in climbing roses and jasmine. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns of gold and shadow across everything. But the most beautiful addition wasn't the flowers or the decorations. It was the stone memorial bench in the corner of the garden, designed with simple elegance and bearing a plaque that read, "In loving memory of Marcus Washington. Father, husband, forever in our hearts." Zuri sat on that bench now, wearing a maroon flower girl dress, her hair styled with tiny white flowers woven through her curls. She traced the letters of her father's name with one finger, her expression peaceful. Daddy would like this, wouldn't he, Mama? Gabrielle crouched beside her daughter, careful not to wrinkle her blue wedding dress. He would love it, baby. He'd be so happy for us. I think he'd like Julian. They're both kind. They both read good stories. They both make you smile. I think they would have been friends. Will you tell Julian about Daddy sometimes? So he knows who Daddy was. Every day. Your daddy is part of our story, Zuri. He always will be. Julian appeared around the corner of the garden, looking handsome in his dark green suit. His face lit up when he saw them. Almost time. Everyone's waiting. He'd been cleared by his cardiologist 2 weeks after Zuri's revelation. The blockages were real but manageable with medication and lifestyle changes. No surgery needed, just careful monitoring and healthy habits. The relief had been profound, but even if the news had been worse, Gabrielle knew she would have chosen this path. Julian sat on the memorial bench beside Zuri. Your dad would be proud of you, you know. You're brave and smart and kind. All the things a dad hopes his daughter will be. Are you going to be my dad now? I'm going to be your Julian. Your stepdad. Someone who loves you like a dad but knows your real dad is irreplaceable. Is that okay? Can I call you Dad sometimes? Julian's eyes filled with tears. If you want to, I would be honored. Okay. But I'll still call you Julian too. Because you're both. You're Julian who's also going to be my dad. That works perfectly. Mrs. Chin appeared on the garden path. It's time. Everyone's ready. The ceremony was small and intimate. Julian's sister Rebecca served as maid of honor. His business manager stood as best man. The staff lined the chairs, along with a few close friends and family members. But the most important person sat in the front row. Zuri holding a basket of rose petals and grinning from ear to ear. The officiant was a woman Julian knew from one of his charity boards, warm and genuine. She smiled at the gathered guests before speaking. We're here today to celebrate the joining of two people who found each other against all odds. Julian and Gabrielle's story isn't a fairy tale. It's better than that. It's real. It's honest. It's built on choosing each other every day even when things are difficult. Gabrielle and Julian stood facing each other, hands clasped, eyes locked. The past 6 months had been full of doctor's appointments, therapy sessions for Zuri, and difficult conversations about money and power and how to build an equal partnership when everything about their situations was unequal. But they'd done it. They'd navigated every obstacle by remembering that kindness, hope, and love had to lead. Julian, do you take Gabrielle to be your wife? To love and honor her, to be her partner and friend in health and sickness, in wealth and poverty for all your days? I do. Absolutely and completely. Gabrielle, do you take Julian to be your husband? To love and honor him, to be his partner and friend in health and sickness, in wealth and poverty for all your days? I do. With my whole heart. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Julian, you may kiss your bride. They kissed to applause and cheers, and when they pulled apart, Zuri was standing beside them, having abandoned her seat to be part of the moment. Can I kiss too? She asked. They laughed and both bent down to kiss her cheeks, the three of them wrapped in an embrace that felt like coming home. The reception was held in the mansion's ballroom, transformed with flowers and lights and joy. They danced and ate and celebrated not just a wedding but a family being formed. Julian's business associates who'd expressed concern about his choice of bride found themselves charmed by Gabrielle's intelligence and grace. Those who couldn't accept it simply weren't invited. "I have an announcement," Julian said when it was time for speeches. Everyone quieted, glasses raised for a toast. "Gabrielle and I have been discussing how to build a life that honors both where we've been and where we're going. We've decided to start a non-profit organization focused on helping single parents and their children." Gabrielle stepped forward, her hand in Julian's. "It will be called the Marcus Washington Foundation, named after my late husband. We want to provide housing assistance, job training, childcare support, and mental health services for families facing the same struggles I faced after losing my partner. No one should have to choose between keeping a roof over their children's heads and taking time to grieve." The room erupted in applause. Rebecca was crying openly. Mrs. Chin dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Additionally," Julian continued, "I'm stepping back from the daily operations of Harrison Hotels. I'll remain majority owner and chairman of the board, but I'm hiring a CEO to handle the day-to-day business. I want to spend my time with my family and building something that actually makes a difference in people's lives." More applause, but Gabrielle could see the surprise on some faces. Julian Harrison, the workaholic billionaire, choosing family over empire? It was almost unthinkable. But it was real. They'd discussed it for months, weighing every option. In the end, Julian had been clear. He'd spent too much of his life building wealth and not enough building meaning. He wanted the second half of his life to be different. That evening, after most of the guests had left and Zuri was asleep in her room with Rebecca watching over her, Gabrielle and Julian walked through the garden together. She was still in her wedding dress, he was still in his suit, and the moon was bright overhead. "Happy?" Julian asked. Deliriously. "You." "More than I knew was possible. I used to think happiness was closing a good business deal or seeing my hotel succeed. I had no idea what I was missing." They stopped at Marcus's memorial bench. Gabrielle ran her hand over the smooth stone. "Do you think he'd approve? Of us?" "I think he'd be grateful someone is loving and protecting the people he had to leave behind. I think he'd want you to be happy." "I'm happy. But I also miss him." "Is that strange?" "Not at all. Love doesn't disappear just because someone dies. You get to keep loving him and build a new love with me. They don't cancel each other out." "How did you get so wise?" "Therapy. Lots and lots of therapy." They laughed together, the sound carrying across the quiet garden. This was their life now. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and honest and full of love. The Marcus Washington Foundation launched 3 months later with offices in 5 cities and plans to expand nationwide. Gabrielle split her time between managing the foundation and painting in her studio. Her work started attracting attention from local galleries, and she had her first small exhibition scheduled for the following spring. Julian kept his promise to step back from daily business operations. He consulted on major decisions but spent most of his time on the foundation and with his family. His health remained stable with medication and regular checkups. He'd even started running with Gabrielle in the mornings, determined to stay as healthy as possible for as long as possible. Zuri thrived. She started at a prestigious private school where she excelled in everything from math to art. Her nightmares became rare, her anxiety manageable. She talked about her father often, keeping his memory alive through stories and pictures and visits to his grave with flowers she grew in the garden Julian had taught her to tend. "I'm working on a school project about family," she told them one evening at dinner. She was 7 now, growing taller and more confident every day. "We have to draw our family tree. But mine is complicated." "Why complicated?" Gabrielle asked. "Because I have Daddy in heaven and I have Dad Julian here and I have you, Mama. How do I show all of that on one tree?" Julian considered this carefully. "What if your tree has 2 branches? One branch is your original family, your birth parents, your father who died. The other branch is your chosen family, me, any siblings you might have someday, the extended family we're building. Both branches are part of the same tree, both equally important. Can I do that? Can I put both on my project?" "Absolutely. Your teacher will understand. And if they don't, we'll explain together." Zuri nodded, satisfied. "I like having 2 branches. It means I get more people to love me." "That's exactly right," Gabrielle said, her throat tight with emotion. 1 year after the wedding, they gathered in the garden for a small ceremony of their own design. They planted a tree, a young oak that would grow strong and tall, its branches eventually providing shade for future generations. This is our family tree, Julian explained to Zuri as they packed dirt around the roots. It's going to grow with us. Every year we'll measure how much taller it's gotten, how much wider its branches have spread. And someday maybe your children will climb in it. Will Daddy be part of this tree too? Zuri asked. His memory is part of it. Every good thing he taught you, every way he loved you, that's growing in this tree's roots. He's part of what makes our family strong. They stood together as the sun set, three people who'd found each other through grief and loneliness and chosen each other through courage and love. It wasn't the ending any of them had planned. It was better. It was real. What should we name it? Gabrielle asked. The tree needs a name. The Hope Tree, Zuri said immediately. Because it's about hope. Hope that sad things can get better. Hope that new families can grow. Hope that love doesn't run out even when people die. The Hope Tree, Julian repeated. Perfect. And it was perfect. Not in the way fairy tales are perfect, with every problem solved and every ending happy. But perfect in the way real life can be when people choose kindness over judgment, love over fear, and hope over cynicism. They had their struggles. There were days when Gabrielle felt insecure about her place in Julian's world. Days when Julian's health issues scared them both. Days when Zuri grieved her father so intensely it hurt to watch. Days when money and privilege and power created tensions in their relationship. But they faced those days together. They talked through problems instead of hiding from them. They went to therapy individually and as a family. They built something honest and strong that could weather whatever storms came. 3 years after the wedding, Rebecca called with news that changed everything again. Julian, I'm pregnant. After years of trying, it's finally happening. That's wonderful. Julian was genuinely thrilled for his sister. But I'm scared. What if something goes wrong? What if I'm not a good mother? What if? Then you'll have family to help you. That's what we do. We help each other. He hung up and turned to Gabrielle, who'd overheard the conversation. We should be closer to Rebecca. She's going to need support during the pregnancy and after. Are you thinking of moving? I'm thinking of building. There's land adjacent to this property. What if we built a compound? Multiple houses, shared common areas, space for everyone to have privacy but be close when needed. Your friend Rachel keeps saying she wants to move back to this area. We could build her a house too. Create a community of chosen family. Gabrielle thought about it. The idea of having her best friend nearby, of watching Julian's sister raise a child with their support, of building something bigger than just the three of them. I love it. Let's do it. The compound took 2 years to build. 3 houses arranged around a central courtyard and garden. Julian and Gabrielle's main house. A smaller house for Rebecca and her growing family. A guest house where Rachel eventually moved with her 2 children after divorcing her husband. It's like a village, Zuri said when it was finished. She was 10 now, on the cusp of adolescence but still young enough to be excited about having cousins and friends so close by. It's better than a village, Julian corrected. It's a family we chose. Every single person here chose to be part of this community. The Marcus Washington Foundation expanded to 12 cities. They'd helped over 5,000 single-parent families find stable housing and employment. Gabrielle's paintings were now featured in galleries across the country, with all proceeds going to the foundation. Julian's hotels continued to thrive under his CEO's management, providing the financial foundation for everything they built. But the real success wasn't measured in money or achievements. It was measured in moments, Zuri laughing with her cousins in the garden. Rebecca's baby taking his first steps while everyone cheered. Rachel finding love again with someone who appreciated her strength. Julian's latest heart checkup showing continued stability. Gabrielle's smile when she walked through the garden every morning, taking in the beauty they'd created together. On what would have been Marcus's 40th birthday, they held a small ceremony at the memorial bench. Zuri was 11 now, thoughtful and articulate beyond her years. I want to say something, she told the small group gathered, Gabrielle, Julian, Rebecca, Rachel and a few close friends. Everyone thinks I was little when my dad died so I don't remember him well. But that's not true. I remember lots of things. She pulled out a notebook filled with her own handwriting. I've been writing down memories before they fade completely. I remember how Daddy sang in the shower. Really badly but he didn't care. I remember how he made up silly stories at bedtime where I was always the hero. I remember how he taught me to ride my bike even though he was scared I'd get hurt. I remember he loved Mama so much that sometimes he'd just look at her and smile for no reason. Gabrielle was crying. Julian held her hand tightly. Dad Julian, Zuri continued using the name she'd settled on, You're different from my first dad. You read different books and tell different jokes and teach me different things. But you love me just as much. You love Mama just as much. And that's not confusing or bad. That's just the way love works. It grows and changes and makes room for everyone. Come here, Julian said, his voice rough with emotion. Zuri walked into his arms and Gabrielle joined them, the three of them holding each other while friends watched with tears in their own eyes. Your father would be so proud of you, Julian whispered to Zuri. Proud of how smart you are, how brave you are, how you've taken your grief and turned it into strength. You helped me do that. Both of you. You showed me that sad things don't have to be the end of the story. They can be the middle and the end can still be happy. That night, after everyone had gone home, Gabrielle and Julian sat in their bedroom overlooking the garden. The hope tree was tall now, its branches spreading wide, its leaves rustling in the evening breeze. Do you remember that first night? Gabrielle asked. When you found Zuri in your study at midnight? I remember thinking my life was about to get very complicated. It did get complicated. Best complication I ever experienced. You know what I was thinking that night? I was thinking this little girl was going to teach me something important. I just didn't know what yet. What did she teach you? Julian considered carefully. That family isn't about biology or status or any of the things I thought mattered. It's about who you show up for. Who shows up for you. Who you choose to love even when it's hard. Who chooses you back. And what did I teach you? Gabrielle asked with a slight smile. That being vulnerable isn't weakness. That accepting help isn't failure. That love isn't something you earn through achievement, it's something you receive through grace. And that sometimes, the person you least expect to change your life completely is the one who changes it most. Pretty profound for a guy who started out just wanting someone to make his house less lonely. I wanted so much more than that. I just didn't know how to ask for it. Didn't know it was possible. Gabrielle leaned her head on his shoulder, looking out at the life they'd built. Do you think we would have found each other if Zuri hadn't started following you around? I like to think so. But maybe not as quickly. Maybe not as deeply. She was our catalyst. Our little matchmaker who didn't even know that's what she was doing. She was trying to save you. Turns out she saved all of us. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out above the garden. Somewhere in the house, Zuri was probably still awake, reading by flashlight under her covers. Some things never changed. The girl who'd followed a billionaire through his mansion now followed her own curiosity through books and ideas and dreams. Julian? Gabrielle said softly. Oh? Thank you. For what? For seeing us. For choosing us. For building this beautiful, messy, perfect life with us. For being brave enough to let yourself love again. Thank you for the same things. And for teaching me that hope isn't naive. It's courageous. It's choosing to believe in good things even when you've experienced bad ones. Hope and love and kindness, Gabrielle said. That's what leads the way, right? Every time. No matter what. And so the story ends where it began. With a little girl, a lonely man, and a woman trying to build a life from broken pieces. But now those pieces have been reassembled into something new and strong and beautiful. A family forged not through biology or circumstance but through choice and love and the courage to hope for better days. The maid's little girl kept following the billionaire until she didn't need to anymore. Until she knew with absolute certainty that he would never leave, never disappear, never be lost the way her first father was lost. And in teaching him how to be found, she found herself. They all did. That's the power of love. That's the magic of choosing each other. That's the beauty of building family from hope and kindness and the brave decision to try again. That's how happy endings really work.